You ever get that feeling like when you're standing in a certain place and you can just sense the history? Like every brick has a story to tell.
Oh, absolutely. It's like being surrounded by the ghosts of the past.
Exactly. Well, today we're diving deep into a family whose story is practically woven into the fabric of American history, the Rockefellers. And when we say history, we're talking about the kind that built empires, sparked controversy, and continues to shape our world today.
It's funny you should mention empires, because when you think about the Rockefellers, it's hard not to picture those early images of John D. Rockefeller, looking stoic and unyielding, the epitome of an industrial titan. But where did it all begin?
It all started with oil. Black gold, Texas tea, whatever you want to call it, oil was the engine of the 20th century, and John D. Rockefeller, he saw that coming.
He wasn't just a businessman, he was a visionary. He understood the potential of oil in a way that few others did at the time. This wasn't just about kerosene lamps.
Right. He saw oil fueling industries driving transportation, shaping the world as we knew it. And he wasn't content to just ride the wave. He wanted to control it.
And that's where Standard Oil comes in, right?
Exactly. Standard Oil was like Rockefeller's baby, his brainchild. It started as a small oil refinery in Cleveland, Ohio. But under his leadership, well, it became something else entirely.
Something much, much bigger. By the late 1800s, Standard Oil controlled a staggering 90% of the oil refining capacity in the United States.
Think about that for a second. 90%. It's hard to even fathom that level of market dominance today.
It's almost like a monopoly, wouldn't you say?
Well, that's putting it mildly. It was a monopoly. And Rockefeller, he achieved it through this ingenious but also ruthless business strategy called vertical integration.
Ah, yes. Vertical integration. Basically, Rockefeller realized that if he wanted to control the oil market, he couldn't just focus on one part of it. He needed to control everything from the ground up.
It's like if you wanted to dominate the pizza industry, but instead of just opening a pizza place, you decided to buy the farms that grow the tomatoes, the factories that make the cheese, the trucks that deliver the ingredients, and even the companies that make the pizza boxes.
You'd control the entire supply chain from start to finish.
And that's exactly what Rockefeller did. Standard Oil, they owned the oil wells, the pipelines, the refineries, the railroads. They even had their own network of gas stations.
It was brilliant, if a little bit, shall we say, ambitious.
Ambitious might be an understatement. This level of control, it made Rockefeller one of the wealthiest men in the world, but it also made him a target.
The public, they started to get wary of Standard Oil's power. Farmers felt squeezed, small businesses struggled to compete, and politicians, well, they took notice.
This all culminated in 1911 with the landmark Supreme Court case, Standard Oil Co. of New Jersey v. United States.
A case that would forever change the landscape of American business.
The Supreme Court ruled that Standard Oil was indeed a monopoly, and they ordered it to be broken up into 34 separate companies. Now, you would think that this would be the end of the story, right? The mighty Rockefeller brought low.
It seems like the logical conclusion, but that's what's so fascinating about the Rockefellers. They always seem to find a way.
Because here's the twist. John D. Rockefeller, he actually emerged from the breakup even wealthier than before.
Wait, how is that possible? You break up his company and he somehow makes more money?
It's a classic case of understanding how to play the long game. You see, even though Standard Oil was divided, Rockefeller, he still owned a significant chunk of stock in each of those new companies.
So as those companies grew, so did his wealth.
Exactly. The breakup that was supposed to diminish his power actually ended up making him even richer.
Talk about an unexpected turn of events. But this is also where the Rockefeller story takes on a new dimension. It's not just about amassing wealth anymore. It's about what you do with it, how you use it, and perhaps most importantly, how you leverage it to shape your legacy.
It makes you wonder what it must have been like to be John D. Rockefeller Jr. Can you imagine inheriting that kind of fortune, that legacy?
Oh, absolutely. Talk about pressure. To be born into that level of wealth, but also to inherit the reputation, the scrutiny.
Because you can't just erase history, right? The public, they didn't forget about Standard Oil's tactics just because John D. Rockefeller started giving money away.
It's a fascinating dilemma, isn't it? How do you reshape a narrative that's already so deeply ingrained in the public consciousness?
And that's where John D. Rockefeller Jr., he really sets himself apart. He understood that true power wasn't just about amassing wealth. It was about using it strategically, thoughtfully.
And that's where we get into this whole concept of strategic philanthropy, right?
Exactly. And it wasn't just about the amount of money. It was about the causes he chose, the impact he aimed to make. I mean, take the restoration of Colonial Williamsburg, for example.
That was a stroke of genius from a historical preservation standpoint, of course,
Mm.
but also from a public relations perspective.
Because it tapped into this sense of shared American heritage, right? Suddenly, the Rockefellers weren't just these ruthless industrialists. They were preservers of history, patrons of the arts.
And let's not forget about Rockefeller Center. Talk
Yeah.
about a power move, building this Art Deco masterpiece in the heart of Manhattan during the Great Depression, no
It's
less.
like they were saying, we're not just here to make money, we're here to build, to create, to inspire.
And to provide jobs, let's not forget that. Rockefeller Center, it provided employment for thousands of people during a time of economic hardship. It was a beacon of hope in a time of despair.
It's fascinating how these grand philanthropic gestures can almost single-handedly shift public perception, at least to some extent.
It makes you wonder, though, doesn't it? Was it truly altruism, or was there an element of calculation of trying to control the narrative?
I mean, it's probably a bit of both, right? And maybe it doesn't really matter. The impact was undeniable. But the story doesn't end with John D. Rockefeller Jr. He had 5 sons, and each of them, they grappled with this legacy in their own way.
It's like they were each handed a piece of a very complicated puzzle.
And it's up to them to figure out how it all fits together. It's like we open this door into this whole new generation of Rockefellers, each one trying to figure out their own place in the world with this massive legacy looming over them.
It's like having all the resources imaginable, but also this weight of expectation, trying to forge your own path while carrying the family name.
And we left off talking about how different those paths were. I mean, you've
Wow.
got Nelson chasing political power, David becoming this financial titan, Lawrence dedicating himself to conservation.
Each brother grappling with the question of what it really means to be a Rockefeller.
And it gets even more interesting when you look at the remaining 2 brothers, Winthrop and John D. Rockefeller III.
Right. Winthrop, he's a fascinating case. He ends up as the governor of Arkansas, of all places.
Arkansas. That seems like a world away from the skyscrapers of Manhattan. What drew him there?
It seems like he was searching for something different, a way to connect with people on a more personal level, to make a tangible difference in their lives.
And maybe, just maybe, step out of the shadow of his family's past.
It's certainly possible. He championed progressive causes, education reform, racial equality, issues that weren't always easy to tackle, especially in the American South during that era.
Talk about carving your own path. And then there's John D. Rockefeller III, the eldest of the brothers. He seemed to take a different approach altogether.
John D. Rockefeller III, he seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders.
It's like he felt this immense responsibility for the family's wealth, the impact it had, both good and bad.
He dedicated his life to philanthropy, focusing on issues like population growth, Asian art and culture, fostering international understanding.
It's as if he was trying to use the family fortune to heal the world, to bridge divides, to leave a legacy that was less about profit and more about peace.
It's a remarkable contrast, isn't it? From oil empires to philanthropic endeavors, the Rockefellers. They embody this strange dichotomy of American ambition, this drive for success coupled with a desire to give back, to make amends.
It's like they were constantly trying to balance the scales.
And that tension, that push and pull, it's still playing out today. We see it in the debates about wealth inequality, about the role of philanthropy, about the responsibility that comes with success.
It's a conversation that John D. Rockefeller started over a century ago, and it's one that we're still grappling with today.
And maybe that's the most enduring legacy of the Rockefellers. They force us to ask these tough questions, to confront these uncomfortable truths about wealth, power, and the impact we have on the world.
They remind us that history isn't just something we read about in textbooks. It's something we're actively shaping with every decision we make.
So, the next time you walk past Rockefeller Center or hear the family name mentioned, take a moment to reflect on the complexities, the contradictions, the enduring legacy of a family that continues to shape our world, even from beyond the grave.
It's a legacy that challenges us to think critically, to use our own resources wisely, and to strive to leave the world a better place than we found it. And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the Rockefeller dynasty, a story of ambition, philanthropy, and the enduring power of legacy. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and as always, keep diving deep.